Let's get one thing straight right the hell up front. This movie has no reason to exist. Remaking Ghostbusters is just about the stupidest idea that anybody in Hollywood has had since somebody said, let's make a bloated, ultraviolet clusterfuck about the goddamn Super Friends. And it probably will remain the stupidest idea until somebody actually makes that fucking Tetris movie. Remaking beloved classics is almost always a bad idea because you're effectively doomed to suffer in comparison right from the outset, but remaking something like Ghostbusters is especially fraught because its alchemy is so specific and impossible to replicate. It worked because of a lightning-in-the-bottle, once-in-a-lifetime confluence of a perfect cast, perfect premise, perfect director, and team coming together at exactly the right moment in time and space. Not because What If Exorcists were more like blue-collar exterminators is some can't-miss premise that anyone can just run with. So yes, making this movie is an inherently shitty idea, and just about everyone involved would have been better served doing almost anything else. And that was true before a word of the screenplay or a goddamn frame of film was shot. So given that, how'd they do? Not half bad, actually. As a matter of fact, save for a handful of extremely annoying faults mainly pertaining to structure and technique, the new Ghostbusters comes frustratingly close to being maybe the best possible version of its own stupid idea. The cast is good, their chemistry is great, the new setup is interesting, the vast majority of the jokes land, and most importantly of all the main characters are compelling, interesting, well-conceived, and we enjoy spending time with them. Make no mistake, that the new Ghostbusters ends up being overall a good movie is owed almost entirely to the new team being a crew of fantastic characters who you can easily imagine following through extraordinary adventures, which unfortunately you're going to have to imagine because they are definitely not having one of those here. But until that flaw fully manifests, it's compelling and a lot of fun watching things come together. The premise here is that Kristen Wiig is this physics professor named Erin who finds her chance at a big promotion imperiled because a book about ghost hunting she wrote years ago with her estranged former best friend Abby, that would be Melissa McCarthy's character, has gone back into print. While attempting to get Abby and her new ghost hunting partner Holtzman, that would be Kate McKinnon, who's probably going to be in every fucking movie now that she completely stole this one, holy shit, she is a movie star, to get them to stop selling the book, the three women instead discover that someone is planting devices around historically haunted areas of New York City that ramp up the presence and power levels of ghosts, and must team up with Leslie Jones as a local history expert named Patty to form the Ghostbusters and neutralize the new threat. Now as starting points go, that'll do more than fine, and I was especially glad they didn't do a bunch of stupid ass topical humor about them being a tech startup or some bullshit. What's important is that the main emotional through line of Abby and Erin reconnecting works like gangbusters. Patty and Holtzman alternately drive the expositional and absurdist comedy elements with aplomb. The best parts of the movie are when these guys are all just hanging around doing Ghostbusters stuff, and yes, what you've heard is true, Chris Hemsworth is a revelation as Kevin, an incompetent, almost inhumanly dumb beefcake that the Ghostbusters hire as a receptionist basically because he's gorgeous. Hemsworth is an absolutely hysterical riot in the role, clearly relishing his chance to shed his typecasting as the least interesting Avenger. Unfortunately, the movie is way too aware of this. The whole film kind of relies way too much on improv, which is the problem with most modern comedy, and it's almost too enamored of him, and he occasionally becomes one of those jokes that gets overused in time that could have been better spent shoring up the narrative. That, in the end, is the big letdown here. It may be called Ghostbusters, but the Bill Murray, Harold Ramis comedy this film most resembles is Stripes. Two solid acts worth of really funny people mining hilarious jokes from training sequences and character interactions, and then kind of falls apart when the plot takes over in Act 3. And if you're looking for the main reason why this remake can't live up to the original, that's why. Even though the original Ghostbusters was making fun of overcomplicated Lovecraftian horror mythology with the whole Gozer, Zool, Gatekeeper, Keymaster business, when all that stuff does come to the forefront of the plot, that movie jumps from good to great, whereas in this remake, it's the exact moment that the story breaks down. Now, there's a lot of little mistakes that figure into this, but the main one is that the bad guy just doesn't work. As played by Neil Casey, he's basically a random jerk-off named Rowan, and the basic premise is that he's a whiny loner nihilist who wants to raise the dead and destroy the world out of revenge because he was bullied for being a nerd, and that's about it. Now, I mean, kudos to the writers for being spot fucking on and anticipating exactly the sort of worthless fanboy jerk-offs who were going to be driven into a spitting misogynist lather about the main casting and preemptively lighting them up, but there's nothing else to Rowan, and he's just too boring of a nemesis to build a big final conflict around. You keep hoping there's some Gozer-esque higher power waiting to be revealed, but no, we're stuck with this fucking guy. There's also an awkward transition from Act 2 to Act 3 where Kristen Wiig is separated from the rest of the main cast for completely unexplained reasons that renders her later heroic comeback moment weirdly moot. Feels like there was an entire subplot cut out there. What feels like an easy juxtaposition of Rowan as an evil version of Abby and Erin never really goes anywhere and doesn't develop. And a shitload of expensive looking visual gags about ghosts from different time periods and New York morphing back into its 1970s form that feel like they should have been a payoff to Patty's story, instead just pop up without explanation. And while it's cool to see the crew bust out all kinds of cool new equipment, coming soon to a store near you, and all kinds of badass fight moves at the end, there's nothing about it that's really informed by their characters or personalities, and that kind of makes it come off kind of perfunctory. And that's a real fucking shame, because with a stronger villain and a finale that was structured to pay off character work instead of just being a fireworks show, I feel like Ghostbusters could have been a real contender. But despite all of the obstacles of being a bad idea to begin with, having an all-time terrible marketing campaign, I mean, holy shit, did Sony's trailer people drop the ball on this one? And almost a year's worth of internet man-babies crying about gender-flipped casting that the movie itself doesn't even make any kind of big deal out of, the Ghostbusters remake is actually pretty goddamn decent. I mean, it's definitely no classic, and it can't touch the original, no surprise there, but I would really like to see a sequel to it just to hang out with these characters more. A great team deserved a great story. Bottom line, 3 out of 4 stars, good but no classic, and seriously for a minute, if you really are one of these guys who's bent out of shape because they cast chicks in this one, please, for the love of Gozer, grow the fuck up.